Today, more than ever, people demand secure, seamless experiences, and that's whether they're purchasing a product, accessing e-government services, or logging into corporate networks. Credential, issuance solutions and digital security lie at the very heart of these interactions. And I'm joined by Mitesh Chauhan, who's Global Product Director at Entrust, which is a world leader in data protection. Mitesh, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Sarah. Good to be here.
Congratulations are in order. Most Innovative Global Product Director 2022.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So tell us a little bit more about your path that led to your position at Entrust.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey through my career. I've spent quite a lot of time working around cloud when cloud wasn't actually cloud, and around networking platforms. And sort of fitting all the jigsaw puzzles in terms of, getting all the bits and pieces to some nirvana that I'm looking for, which I haven't quite figured out. But one of the pieces I felt was missing was the security aspect of it. So I thought, who better to work with than Entrust, who are sort of pioneers, who are pioneers in the security industry, and I thought, let's join them. Just to put it into perspective, I mean, Entrust are leading the way in terms of security around websites and a payment industry. So when you log onto a website and you see a little logo pop up on the left on the toolbar, you see it's protected by Entrust. That's protecting the actual website. And it's like today when we were traveling into London, if you were sort of swiping through and you're wondering how that payment's been secured and assured that it's not going to fall into the wrong hands, that's also done by Entrust as well.
So they're thought leaders in the industry.
Big thought leaders, and globally recognised as well.
So digital security by its very nature has to be at the forefront of innovation. I mean, what would you say now is the cutting edge?
Now, if I take what I did in my previous role, which was really focusing around network automation and integration, where where APIs. That was a core focus of my role. But one of the interesting projects I got to work on was working with the internet exchanges and how we bring those workloads closer to the edge. And the project that I got to work on was interesting in the nature of when an enterprise sets up shop, shall we say, within a data center, and they want to sort of sell their services, whether it be e-commerce or whatever their business is, it's media or whatever it is. They go into a data center, they set themselves up, they purchase some space, power, connectivity, and that could take up to 6 months. And then they need to ensure that data flows out the system, so you have what's called internet exchanges. So everything that most of our data that flows go through what's called an internet exchange. The problem that they faced was that and enterprises face is that when they want to scale their business, it means, right, I need to go to, let's say, take example, Germany. Let's say, Sarah, you wanted to go set up shop in Germany and saying, well, business is really successful in the UK, I need to go move it into Germany, and I need to be closer to all my peers that are there. So any of the SaaS platforms that you're using, any other platform, I need to be there. Unfortunately, that can typically take up to 6 months or 12 months, depending on the investment you need to get there. Is it going to work? What happens if it doesn't work? You're going to have to roll that all back and what have you. And so we looked at a way of going, well, how do we use the network? How do we use automation? How do we use integration to make that really, really seamless? And so we worked on a project which that allowed enterprises to effectively roll their infrastructure out within the space of a few minutes. And so what it led to was the ability for not having everything centrally processed, but having everything at the edge. And hence, that's where the proliferation of edge started. That once you do that, you set up shop, and that's an interesting project, and that's great. What happens is other organizations then start to think about, well, how do I set up at the edge? And so that, with the rise of, shifting gears here slightly, with the rise of containerization and 5G and IoT, people are now thinking about, well, it's good enough for me to set up shop there, but I actually want to be a little bit autonomous and set up lots of edge workloads. So an interesting stat I saw the other day was that 90% of 90% of breaches are around misconfigurations when people put their infrastructure within containers, and as these are propping more and more up around the edge, it brings their own problem sets, right? Especially with the event of 5G, IoT, more and more of these devices. How do we actually go about securing them? How do we ensure that, you know, there aren't any bad actors who are going to take advantage of, you know, the infrastructures out there? So part of what Entrust is working on, what I'm working on, is around securing devices, securing the authentication, the platform itself, and making sure that these sort of misconfigurations don't happen, and that when you do roll platforms such as these out, and this could be anywhere in the world, that they're all secure.
So the pandemic has obviously speeded up adoption of all of these things, and security is going to become more and more important because of that, because it's going to be everywhere, isn't it? Everyone needs this.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because not only are you seeing more and more workloads popping up, but you're seeing something quite interesting happening within the data center industry as well. You're seeing what are called edge data centers popping up as well, where people are putting their hyper-converged infrastructure in there and, you know, running things like Red Hat or VMware or whatever cloud platform they want, so whether it be private or public, and they're processing more and more of that data at the edge. But at some point in time, that data does need to be then transported back to wherever, you know, that location is. And therefore, you know, latency is really, really quite key. Having really solid network links and being able to transport data backwards and forwards is quite key. But as you said, you know, having security at the edge and at the core is now become quite relevant.
So Entrust has been pushing into new frontiers and security regions, and that's across the globe, isn't it? So tell me the significance of that.
Yeah, so part of what I've been doing at Entrust has been interesting, and as we've just talked about, seeing more and more of these workloads pop up at the edge and becoming a lot more relevant. What we're seeing is customers and enterprises are starting to go, well, actually, not only do I want my workload at the edge, but I actually want my security at the edge as well. And what that's actually translated to is that we've actually built security regions. So we have security regions at the moment in the US, in the UK. We've just recently launched Germany, being, where data privacy is quite key around there. And we've just launched also in APAC as well, in Australia, again, where data concerns and some of the services we want to deliver there are quite key to those regions being available. And we've gone even further than that. We've gone into a space where it says, well, actually, we want to make sure that even in the event of a failure of a security platform, we've got multiple availability zones, and availability zones allow customers to then architect their applications over multiple security zones, meaning that even in the event of a failure that could happen at a data center, you've got another data center or another zone that you can pick up and still carry on providing security to the platform to the edge. And so we're going to be rolling more and more regions out, and that's going to become, you'll see that more and more within the press.
Fantastic. So it's going to be worldwide domination.
Well, something like that, yes.
Something like that. So what's next on your professional roadmap?
That's a really good question. As I've told you about automation, integration, speed of adoption, all of those things are really, really key. And one of the things we've recognized is that security is hard. Security is really hard. I know, because I'm at Entrust. I'm learning a lot around security and what it actually takes to deploy security, and even simply to understand the different nuances, the different platforms that are available. But one thing that we feel that's really missing within this industry is harmonization across all of these platforms. So part of my professional roadmap is going to be, how do we harmonize security at the network layer, at the data layer, at the transport layer, at the application layer? As I've talked about containers, how do we bring security towards more around containers? How do we take preventative measures before breaches occur? And so my roadmap for the next, typically as a product manager, we look into the future from 3 to 5 years. So we're going to be really focusing in around network, around the application layer, around the data layer, and around cloud platforms.
Fantastic. Well, Mitesh Chauhan, Global Product Director at Entrust, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Sarah. Great to be here.